Hey everybody, and welcome to SpaceWeek Live for June 21st, 2020. So here we are. It's been a couple weeks since we had one of these. Apologies for that. But here we are. Launch schedules have picked up. There's pretty much a normal cadence of things getting launched. So let's get into it. Working from home, hazards. Okay, so let's start with Electron. This was June 13th, launched successfully. Let's check it out.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Vehicles get back.
This was the Don't Stop Me Now mission, named in honor of, what was his name? Named after one of their engineers who, I think he passed away, and he was a particular fan of the Queen song Don't Stop Me Now. So that's what they named the mission after. On board was the 3 payloads. A spy satellite, a small spy satellite for the U.S. National Reconnaissance Office, the andesite CubeSat for Boston University, and a NASA CubeSat, or NASA's CubeSat launch initiative, which is going to study Earth's magnetosphere and space weather. So let's see, M2 Pathfinder. Oh yeah, New South Wales, Canberra. New South Wales, Canberra Space was responsible for the M2 Pathfinder satellite, collaborating between them and the Australian government, which is a communications and technology demonstration mission. So I'm not sure what the dimensions of those satellites are. Sometimes Electron carries, a larger number of satellites, so some of these might, especially the NRO satellite, was probably a larger form factor of CubeSat, because there's a whole range of sizes that they can be and still qualify as a CubeSat or a small sat. But next up, Starlink 8. It went off later that same day without a hitch.
15 seconds.
And here we go.
9 is configured for flight.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff of Falcon 9 and Starlink 8.
Starlink 8, nice. What was unique about this, or what was distinctive about this particular Starlink mission, obviously they are becoming quite routine. Of course, rocketry is never routine, but we're getting a lot of Starlink launches in any case. But what was distinctive about this particular mission is that it marked the first time that there was a Starlink rideshare. That is to say, in addition to the Starlink satellites, of which this time there were only 58, not the usual 60, there were also a couple of, actually there were 3 SkySat Earth imaging satellites for the company called Planet. They already have a constellation of Earth imaging satellites up there, but this was represented 3 more of them, 3 SkySats. Next up we have, so sometimes things don't go as planned. So this was a not as prominently advertised a launch, because it was just a sounding rocket, which is just a small rocket that generally goes up to like the Kármán line or the edge of space, around 100 kilometers, and is used for taking samples of the upper atmosphere or conducting short experiments in microgravity, during its perigee, and unfortunately, Momo has been plagued with problems. Momo is a Japanese rocket, and they have had 5 launches, only one of which, since 2017, I should say, only one of which was successful. And this one was, this one followed the trend. So I'll let you see what happened, courtesy of International Rocket Launches, our friend channel, who has compiled this short. I think it's a selection of 3 videos showing what happened. So about 40 seconds into the video, you'll see some odd. Here. Oop. About 40 seconds into the video, you'll see some odd. Oops, sorry for that noise. Some odd sparks come out of the bottom of the rocket, and then at about 1 minute, it totally loses its orientation and flips upside down and breaks apart.
あ、ちょっと見失いました。
So that was a sad day for, yes, thank you, Nico Video Visual Solutions for that. Oh, I think we have, nope, that was just one angle. So, as far as, okay, so I saw someone ask in the chat what the payload of the, here, let's switch. Hi. What the payload of the Momo was. I'm not actually sure. As this was just a small launch, you know, of a sounding rocket. A lot of times the payloads are not, you know, copiously published like they are for a big ticket rocket launch. Let's see, reading. Okay, here's an interesting, what website is this? TechCrunch.com. An interesting excerpt from that website. IST's approach, which is Interstellar Technologies, the maker of the Momo rocket. Their approach is interesting in that it doesn't claim to be cutting edge. Instead, the company says that it focuses on leveraging legacy methods of rocketry along with advances, including additive manufacturing and more modern materials, to reduce costs as much as possible to lower the bar in terms of affordability to serve a wide range of customers. So, there you go. Launched from Hokkaido, Japan. Rescheduled from the end of 2019. It's only a 30-foot tall rocket, which is actually not that much less than the Blue Origin New Shepard, which is like 56 feet or something like that. But yeah, so let us take a look at the chat. I've been jumping around here, not answering questions. Apologies for that. Let me honor that sign up there and actually answer some questions. So first of all, this isn't the first thing. I'm a little late saying first of all, but first of all, thank you all for coming. I appreciate the regulars and the new people alike. Appreciate you coming here. Let's see. Hello, Philippines. Hello, Brazil. Hello, Sierra Foothills, California. I'm in North Carolina myself. Any launches from Wallops in the future? Okay. I presume that's a question regarding, I presume that's regarding Electron. I think someone asked who makes the Electron rocket. Ah, yeah, Real Sven Gaming. Electron is made by Rocket Lab. It's basically a New Zealand company that is based in the United States. It's kind of, yeah. I'm not sure if they probably based the company in the United States, in the United States, so that it would be easier to acquire, like NRO launches and things like that. If it were a foreign company, quote unquote, then that might put roadblocks in place to getting the classified government launches, which is a very lucrative and plentiful market around here. Microbyte went to Boston University. Very cool. Okay. Janko Jonkman. Why is making gravity walk or work on something like the ISS so hard? Good question. That is a function of the nature of orbit. So at 250, approximately 250 miles where the ISS orbits, there's actually 90% gravity, 0.9 g of gravity. So if you elevated yourself to that altitude and stopped, you would begin to fall at about 90% of 9.8 meters per second squared. So the reason they don't fall is because they're moving forward at 17,500 miles per hour. So they are falling constantly. They're in constant free fall, which is what orbital microgravity is. It's free fall. It's not. You're experiencing no weight, not because there's no gravity up there. Gravity is everywhere. You're experiencing no weight because you're moving forward so fast that the curve of the Earth beneath you drops away at the same rate that you are falling. And so the net result is that you stay the same altitude above the Earth. And because there's very few particles of atmosphere up there. I mean, there are some stray oxygen molecules that wander up that high, which is why the ISS has to periodically boost itself by a few miles to stay in orbit. Because there are so few particles of matter up there to slow you down, you just keep going. So the higher your orbit is, the slower that orbital decay will be, because there are going to be fewer particles. But so the reason why you don't experience the sensation of having weight on the ISS is because you're in free fall constantly, just as if you were skydiving on a planet with no atmosphere. Same thing, basically. Now, if we wanted, so one of the problems with microgravity, as they call it, or weightlessness, or 0G, is that one of the effects it has on the human body is a very significant bone mass loss. And so to help fight that, the astronauts exercise 2 hours every day. It's one of the major things they do, is try to keep their bodies from falling apart, because our bodies were evolved to exist, with this heavy pull of gravity under our feet. And when we don't have that, our bones start to disintegrate, basically, which is not good. It does not bode well for long-term spaceflight unless we come up with viable ways of simulating gravity. So one of the ways to do that, which the science fiction field loves, is rotating habitats, rotating cylinders. Basically, you can simulate gravity using centrifugal force by rotating, a cylinder or a torus or some shape, rotating, even if it's not a full circle, even if you're just in a pod on the end of an arm that's rotating, if you have the correct amount of centrifugal force pushing you away from the center of rotation, then you can thereby simulate the effect of gravity and walk around freely, and not float. But that's always a good question, and it's fun to answer, because people have a lot of people have misconceptions as far as how space works in terms of gravity and vacuum and all that. All right. Let's see. Chris V. Now, Now, I'm catching up on the chat, so I apologize if some of these questions have been answered already in the chat, but I will answer them. Jade Palayo, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's very generous of you. And thank you. I am, in fact, a father. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. In fact, I'm a single dad, so I'm like a double father. So Maria is going to ask her questions. Oh, I apologize if some of these questions have been answered already in the chat, but I will address them here nonetheless. Maria Kutujan, asks, from Brazil, asks, how does the Perseverance rover interact with the Ingenuity super drone? There are sensors on the drone that send signals directly to the rover or are sent directly to Earth. So, of course, the Perseverance rover is the Mars 2020 rover that the JPL has been assembling for many months / years. One second. Momo is Nomo. That's right. Okay. Hello, Robert Emmer, and welcome from Lab Padre. No Momo launch today. The Momo launch was not successful. I already discussed that. So yeah, the Perseverance rover is the big Mars rover that JPL has been working on, and very, very coolly have been live streaming their actual work on. They've been doing live streams of the actual assembly of the rover, which is really neat. Unfortunately, I didn't have much chance to watch those when they were doing them, but I should have recorded them for posterity. Maybe they'll do a time lapse or something. But the Ingenuity is a drone that will be on board the Perseverance rover when it lands on Mars in a few months. Well, first of all, it hasn't launched yet. It's going to launch next month in July. But once it lands on Mars, a few months thereafter, the Ingenuity drone has been designed to hover in the Martian atmosphere, which is quite a feat because the Martian atmosphere is about 100 times thinner than Earth's atmosphere. That is, it's less dense, much less dense than Earth's atmosphere. And so there's not much Martian air to grab onto to attain a lift. Now, I haven't actually read up on the Ingenuity drone, but I imagine it must be extremely lightweight. They must have significantly, used the lightest possible materials and everything, because the Martian atmosphere is very insubstantial. Aircraft would have a seriously hard time achieving any lift in the Martian atmosphere. So it'll be very neat to see how that works. But as far as communications, no, I don't think Ingenuity will communicate directly with Earth. First of all, it's going to be a small and lightweight craft, and so it's not going to have the room for large antennas that would be necessary to transmit a signal anywhere between 30 and 100 and some million miles back to Earth, depending on where the planets are in their orbits. And secondly, because of that distance, there's a time lag, anywhere from like 8 minutes, or 8 minutes is to the sun. I could do some quick math, but see, 8 minutes to the sun, I mean, maybe a third of that. So anywhere between about 2.5 minutes and 12 minutes light lag between Mars and Earth, depending on where the planets are in their orbits. And so that is far too much lag to be able to do sort of real-time communications with a drone. So both the Perseverance rover and the Ingenuity drone have a lot of, they've been built in with a lot of autonomy, a lot of logic. The computing power we have nowadays is light years beyond what the old Pathfinder rover or whatever had back in the day. And so they're both the rover and the drone are going to be able to autonomously make decisions as to what, following a set of general commands that are given by NASA. The drone and the rover are going to be able to autonomously make decisions as to, where to move, what to do in order to accomplish the goals that are set out by NASA. So as time progresses, we're going to see this more and more, where our robotic explorers are going to become smarter and smarter, to the point where they're essentially, you know, robotic AIs, and they certainly can't take the place of a human, but they can make a lot of decisions that rovers of the past couldn't hope to. Oh no. I know this was a few minutes ago, but Rockin' Robbins, I'm sorry that Joe Biden appeared on your... he's the gatekeeper. You can't get to space without going through Joe Biden. I've been getting those too. This is going to be a bad year. It'll be the Joe and Donald show all day long. Ring world. Rockin' Robbins mentions that we've better have our systems optimized on the moon before going there, presumably to Mars, he means. Or Belgium? No. What's Belgium? It would be stupid to go there, find a problem, come back, fix it, and return 2 years later. Yeah, so he's definitely referring to Mars. Yeah, and that's the thing. And this is why JPL has mentioned during their talks that they give that one of the biggest cornerstones of their operating model is testing. They test, because you can't test when you're 30 million miles away. You know, I mean, you can't fix it. I mean, you can perform troubleshooting, but you're not going to be able to go there and fix the craft. So you have to make sure that you simulate every possible conceivable, you know, circumstance and build in tolerances and redundancies and so on and so forth in order to deal with any potential outcome before you even launch, which is, you know, is really a rather incredible thing, because you know, when you think of sci-fi shows, you know, Star Trek or whatever, I mean, they have their ship, which was a ship that was designed to explore or whatever. They go out and they encounter all these difficulties, and then they have to come up with solutions for those problems on the spot. With these robotic spacecraft, they well, and they also have matter replicators and things like that, so they're actually able to manufacture solutions while far away from home. But with these robotic explorers, you can't do that. You have to solve all your problems before they even happen, or else, you know, you lose the craft. Gina Miller, good to see you again from Germany. Yes, I think I recall that's where you're from. Yeah, astronomy films. So I don't have. I mean, I could just bring up a stock image if you want, but there was an annular solar eclipse. I should have talked about the eclipse in greater detail, but I can just wing it. There was an annular solar eclipse, and I'm not even sure where it was visible. I know it was not visible from here, but this happened. It was last night, my time, so it was apparently on the other side of the world. You know, sometimes I in the past I have streamed astronomical events like solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, but at that time I got my coverage from timeanddate.com, and I really don't want to rebroadcast their content. They're not like a launch provider or a government agency or something. They're actually a set of hardworking folks who are presenting great information about this thing, and I don't want to hijack their hard efforts. So I did not live stream the annular solar eclipse, but briefly regarding eclipses, what I can do, here, let me bring up while I talk, let me try to find a picture of a total solar eclipse that I took. Fix favorites. So a solar eclipse, of course, is what happens when in the moon's path around the Earth, it happens to traverse right in front of the sun, the disk of the sun as viewed from Earth. Well, because of the coincidental sorry for that. Let me just reduce this a little bit. There we go. All right. Because of the coincidental relationship, the ratio of the size of the moon, the size of the sun, and the distance between us and the sun, the moon is about 400 times smaller in diameter than the sun, and the sun is about 400 times farther away than the moon. And as a result of that, and I say about because the moon's orbit is not perfectly circular, nor is Earth's orbit around the sun. So sometimes it's a little bit closer when it passes in front of the sun, sometimes it's a little bit farther away. And so if the moon is a little bit closer when it passes in front of the disk of the sun, then what we get is a total solar eclipse, but only in a very narrow band, like maybe 40 miles wide, because there's not much wiggle room. That is to say, outside that band, you'll see a partial solar eclipse, maybe almost total solar eclipse, but totality is only in a very narrow band. And that's because the ratio of the size and the distance to the moon and the sun are so close, even within that variable range. So let's see, eclipse, full size. Here we go. This is my favorite. Let me switch over. So I took this photo of a total solar eclipse, the total solar eclipse of 2017. Even though it traversed the entire continental United States, I took this photo from Oregon, even though I live in North Carolina, because I was terrified that after all the effort of trying to get to a viewing area, a good spot to view the eclipse from, that it would become clouded over or something like that, because there's no accounting for weather. The eclipse may be maybe 200 and some thousand miles away, which is the distance to the moon, but the clouds at 20,000 feet or whatever might have prevented me from seeing it, which I was desperate not to happen. So what I did was I researched the entire, all the locations along the path of totality, and I picked one that had a very low chance of cloud cover in the month of August, which turned out to be my home state of Oregon, because that's where I'm from. So it turns out Eastern Oregon is quite arid, has very little cloud cover in that time of year. So that's where I went. Anyway, this view was what I don't have the. Let me look at the EXIF data for this particular image. Let me just tell you what settings I used. Okay, so the f-stop, f8 was the aperture, and with a 1/6 second exposure time at ISO 200. I used ISO 200 because I wanted my pictures to be as crisp as possible. The higher ISO number you use, the more grain is induced into the photo, and I wanted my photos to have as little grain as possible. But as far as the getting this particular view, that's f8 at 1/6 of a second, and the zoom was at 600 millimeters on a crop sensor camera. I have other pictures that brought out the, let's see here, prominences. You see some prominences, some Bailey's beads, which are the last remnants of sunlight peeking through valleys and the terrain on the edge of the moon. And this picture, comparatively, was taken at f/16, so with a much smaller aperture and 1/1000th of a second. So two very different pictures taken of the same event, just a few seconds apart, with very different camera settings, yielding very different views. And so if you ever see a picture of an eclipse where you see prominences and you see Bailey's beads and you see corona, inner corona and outer corona, then that's definitely going to be a composite of multiple images, because the range of brightness of the different elements of an eclipse is very wide. So this was a total solar eclipse. An annular eclipse is what happens when the moon passes in front of the sun when it's a little bit farther away from the Earth. And so the disk, the visible disk of the moon doesn't quite cover the sun, and so what you get is a ring. Now, this image here was what they call the diamond ring of a total solar eclipse. But this was with the sun totally covered, except for this last little edge there. An annular eclipse, you actually don't get to see the corona because you have a ring of the sun, and you can't see me moving my mouse around, can you? But you actually have a ring of the sun's coronosphere or photosphere that is visible around the edge of the moon. And so if we look at, let's say, this picture, which was taken with a solar filter, which is a silver, almost completely opaque special filter that allows you to take pictures directly of the surface of the sun. You see a couple of sunspots there. What you're going to see is a ring of this, you know. But anyway, that happened last night. And to those who were able to see it, congratulations. Viewing a solar eclipse is an amazing thing. But I will hold out for the total solar eclipse of 2024, which is coming to a state near me in just 4 years. And at that time, I hope to have, well, I won't say I hope. I will plan to get the equipment and everything necessary to live stream it for you. Whoever my audience is at that time, I'll live stream it for you. I'll probably have multiple cameras, video cameras, whatever. It's a rare event to witness a total solar eclipse, and it's worth the investment to make it to make the most of it. Incidentally, while we're looking at my eclipse pictures, here's one that turned out kind of weird. Sort of the Eye of Sauron. When I saw this picture because like during the total phase of the eclipse, which only lasted like 2 minutes and 45 seconds for us, my camera I actually didn't touch my camera. I used Eclipse Droid, which is an Android app, and I had my camera tethered to my phone. My phone was actually, the Eclipse Droid app was actually controlling the taking of the pictures. It was a godsend. It was amazing, and I had tested it beforehand, and it worked beautifully. You know, so I had a whole sequence of, you know, every 2 seconds it would take pictures with a different set of camera settings in order to capture the full range of images that were possible. It performed beautifully, and I'll be doing something like that again in 2024. But what happened here was it was in the middle of taking a longer exposure photo. Let's see, what's the time on this one? Yeah, this was a 2-second exposure, so I was trying to get that bright glow. And during those 2 seconds, I repositioned my camera, because at the time I didn't have a sky tracker mount, and it was just, my camera was just on a tripod. And when you're zoomed in at 600 millimeters, I mean, the sun will traverse the entire frame of the image in 2 minutes. So every couple of minutes I was having to move my camera to realign it with the sun. And I happened to move it when it was in the middle of an exposure, and it produced this weird football Io-Sauron image. Okay, so going back to news. So Vega was supposed to launch on the 18th and was then again supposed to launch on the 20th. This would have been represented a couple of firsts. So it would have represented the first launch of a Vega rocket after the loss of, I don't remember which satellite it was, but last year a Vega, I think the second stage failed to ignite, and the rocket arced out into the ocean and crashed, losing like a $600 million satellite. And it was actually represented the largest space insurance claim ever. I'm sure there's more to come, but that was a big blow to Arianespace. They had a couple of Ariane 5 launches after that, but this would be the first Vega launch since that incident. And the second first would be wow, would be that it would be the first launch from the French Guiana spaceport since the pandemic hit. So they shut it down, back in February, and this would be the first launch for Arianespace since that time. But it was delayed due to high upper level winds, which plague both French Guiana and Florida and all launch sites. And to my knowledge, they haven't yet announced the new target date for that. All right, getting back to the chat. Asia solar eclipse, yes. I've got to work on my multitasking, because what happens is I can talk and talk and talk, but I have a difficult time both talking and reading at the same time, which is why sometimes I'll pause and then I'll resume talking. It has to do with attention deficit disorder and being able to task switch, not even task switch, but being able to multitask. But I've got to work on that, see if I can get better at it, because I don't want you to have to experience dead air while I'm reading things. Kofefe. Oh yes, I must say, check this out. My Yin Yang Planets mug. It's amazing. I haven't had it for 3 months, because I was working from home. But this past week, I actually went back to work in the office for the first time since mid-March. And I was able to be reunited with my mug, which I had been wanting to show off during live broadcasts, but I couldn't. All I had was my Stanley Tools one. Now, this particular product is not for sale. This was made by my mom. She's very crafty, and so she applied my logo to the mug and put some little sparkle stars on it, and coated it with epoxy all around, and gave it to me as a birthday gift a couple years ago. I loved it. So catching up on the chat. Chance events rule eclipses. Oh, Rockin' Robin's talking about flat earthers. Well, screw those guys. But I have to say once again, if you ever have the chance to see a total solar eclipse, I mean, any solar eclipse is cool. An annular one is really cool, but a total one, oh my gosh, it will be life-changing. It is unlike anything you have ever experienced, I guarantee it. And don't get too caught up in like trying to take your pictures. That's why I wanted to set my camera to take the pictures automatically, because especially for my first time, I wanted to witness it with my own eyes. And it was incredible. Like, it was an alien experience, not, difficult to describe in words. Okay, turkey thighs. No idea what the conversation's doing. The sun is lit by reflected moonlight. All right, Rockin' Robbins is channeling some crazy. Yeah, so when Vega does launch, and I'm not sure when that will be yet, but they will, this is a, what does it stand for? SSMS. It's a NASA, it's NASA? No, of course it's not NASA. Anyway, it's a proof of concept flight that will contain a whole bunch of CubeSats. 53 satellites. Vega's a much bigger rocket than, I mean, even though it's a small rocket, how big is Vega? Vega rocket. See, this is the beauty of live television. I can look stuff up. Okay, Vega is 98 feet tall. That is much, much taller than, hold on. Than the Electron, which is only 56 feet tall. So, Electron is really a unique creature. It's a really cool little rocket, but little it is. Gina, thank you for the kind words, as always. Dark side of the sun. Annular. Let's define annular. And by the time you hear my voice saying this, you will already see the definition in the chat. That lag is due to a buffer that ensures a smooth playback. Max Crew, good to see you, is asking, is there an estimated date when Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken, the astronauts that were launched on the SpaceX Crew Dragon mission a couple of weeks ago, will return from the ISS? Annular, ring-shaped. There you go. That's, they could have called it a ring eclipse, but they had to use a fancy word for it. And a potentially confusing word, because a lot of people see annular and they think annual, which means yearly, and that obviously doesn't... Good bot. I'm afraid that's not a command on this channel. You'll have to go over to Lab Padre for that one. Which I shall now link because it's a great channel. Anywho, I do not know the return date of Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken. I think it's variable. I think I don't know if I would characterize NASA as playing it by ear, but I don't think that they had a definite return date set when they launched, and I'm not aware of any updates on that. Then again, I've been pretty busy and haven't been putting my ear to the ground much regarding that either. So looking ahead, we're losing some viewers here, so let me go ahead and get to the schedule. Looking ahead to the following week, we've got another Starlink launch with rideshare on the 23rd. That's Tuesday the 23rd at 5:58 p.m. Eastern, 9:58 p.m. GMT, and that is the second rideshare mission with Starlink. They're going to launch, in addition to the Starlink satellites, they're going to launch 2 more Earth observation microsats for Black Sky Global. So I'm guessing there will probably be approximately 58 Starlink satellites, and then the two Black Sky satellites. And then coming up on Friday the 26th at 6 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. GMT, we've got a spacewalk. So this one will be with Chris Cassidy and Bob Behnken. This is US spacewalk number 65. And as with most spacewalks, it starts at 6 a.m. Eastern, and well, the coverage starts at 6 a.m. Eastern. The spacewalk starts at about 7:35 a.m., about an hour and a half later. And the spacewalk itself lasts for up to 7 hours. You know, they can go longer, but they only schedule for up to 6.5 to 7 hours. And that is actually the first of 2 spacewalks which are coming up. The next one after that is actually the following week, which is July 1st, Wednesday, July 1st at 6 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. GMT. That's same spacewalkers, Chris Cassidy and Bob Behnken. But it's been a while since we had a spacewalk, so that'll be fun. And of course, the Starlink launch and the spacewalks will all be live streamed here on Raw Space. There was a Chinese Long March 3B launch that was supposed to happen, but it was delayed. I don't recall the details on that. I currently have it on the calendar for Monday the 29th, but normally China doesn't live stream their launches, but I've heard that this one may be live streamed. And if I can find a source for that, I will provide that stream for you. If not, then say la vie. Let's see. So, in addition to the Falcon 9, now, yeah, there's a couple, at least one other potential launch next week, like the 30th. Which is another Falcon 9 with a GPS satellite, actually, heading for medium Earth orbit at 3:55 p.m. Eastern, 7:55 p.m. GMT. And again, Vega may be launching sometime during that time period, but we'll just have to wait and see when they reschedule that for. So that is what is coming up. Let me revisit the chat, see if there's any pending questions. Oh, my keyboard is a loud one. Sorry, these are not the blue clicky keys. These are the browns. What I have is a Corsair K95 RGB keyboard that my friend got me a few years ago. And actually, when I built my new computer live for you a couple of months ago, it contains a lot of... First of all, I call my new computer Nebula. Nebula contains a lot of Corsair components, and it turns out that the RGB software that controls the coloring for those also controls my old keyboard. So that was a pleasant surprise. So my keyboard is now the same color as my new computer's LED lighting. But yeah, it's got the Cherry MX brown key switches, which are tactile but not clicky. However, being mechanical keys and not with rubber domes, they do make some noise. And I have very heavy fingers. I type with purpose. So yeah. Okay, Dale Duncan is saying that the max life of the solar panels on the Crew Dragon, on this particular Crew Dragon anyway, is roughly 130 days or something. The original mission time was between 30 and 90 days. You know, because they had to, for this Crew Dragon launch, they switched things around. They actually, because of the loss of the original DM1 Crew Dragon that blew up on the pad, during a test, you know, they had to use the next Crew Dragon to do the launch abort test, which then meant that Bob and Doug were able to use the next Crew Dragon, which was more robust than they had originally planned on, for their DM2 mission. And so they actually got a better Crew Dragon, a more robust Crew Dragon with more capability than what they had planned on. So, did you see, J-Dan is asking, did you see that weird-looking meteorite that was found? I did not see a weird-looking meteorite. Well, let me see. Weird meteorite. Now, the sound of the keyboard, I actually find keyboard typing to be sort of an ASMR, oddly satisfying sort of sound. Some people find it annoying. I mean, I find, unless someone's like smashing the keyboard, I find sort of the ambient sound of typing to be relaxing. But Spacey Tales. No, I'm not seeing any immediate results for meteorites, so I'll have to look that up later. But thanks for mentioning it. I will definitely check it out. People talking about solar panels. Space Launch Now shows a Long March launch for tomorrow. Let me check it out. Whoops, that's not. There we go. Okay, so, so the Beta 3 G3, so the Long March 3B apparently will be launching tomorrow at 10:15 p.m. GMT, or 2:15 a.m. I'm sorry, 10:15 p.m. Eastern Time, or 2:15 a.m. GMT on the 23rd. So that was brought up. I'll adjust my schedule accordingly. So, again, China doesn't normally live stream their launches, but if there is a live stream, I'll keep my ear to the ground. If there is a live stream, I'll try to bring it to you. And then, of course, the Falcon 9. All right. Melted space stream. Okay, so that is going to wrap it up for this week. I appreciate you all coming. Good questions, lots of engagement, always appreciated. And I apologize. I don't always I don't always manage to get the Space Weeks done every week because you know, I'm human and sometimes it just doesn't happen. But I do appreciate you being here for this one, and I hope to see you again on Tuesday. Well, maybe on Monday, but then definitely on Tuesday for the Starlink launch. Keep it raw, folks, and do take care. Okay. That was graceful. Okay, catch you later.
What you really hear when you hear melody is the interval between one tone and another. The steps, as it were, on the scale. It's the interval. So in the same way, in the intervals between this year's leaves, last year's leaves, this generation of people and that generation, the interval is in some ways just as important, some ways more important, than what it's between. an essential component of being. You don't have the one without the other, just as your buzzsaw has no teeth without having that. That's the way being is made up.